it's going to be.
Mr. Mender's going to enter a negotiated plea on 21 SC and 22 SC.
Okay. You want to swear the
Yes, sir.
defendant?
Mr. Mender, please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony about to give in the matter presented before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. And if you'll just do us a favor, you'll lean forward and speak for thank you.
Yeah, that might move, so you can just pull up closer to you.
Okay. We'll start with, well, I'm going to go through a series of rights with you where I'll ask you some questions, and then as it relates to the factual basis and what you're pleading guilty to, we'll start with the easier case, less charges, the 22 SC case, and then we'll move to the 21, okay? All right. Please state your true, correct legal name for the record, sir.
Tenquarius Mender.
Okay. And Mr. Mender, are you at this time taking or under the influence of any alcohol, drugs, or medicine? And is there any medication that you take on a daily basis or regularly that you've not taken today that would affect your ability to understand why you're here?
No.
And Mr. Mender, how old are you and how far have you gone to school?
27. Be high school.
You completed high school? Okay. And are you able to read, write, and understand the English language?
Yes.
Sir, do you understand in indictment number 22 SC 183572, you're charged with count 1, conspiracy to violate the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, also known as RICO, and count 44, which is possession of a weapon by incarcerated individual, count 45, possession of a telecommunication device by an incarcerated individual, and count 46, a gang count of participation in criminal street gang activity. Understand you're charged with all those counts?
Yes.
And do you understand that you have the right to plead either guilty or not guilty to those charges? And if you pled not guilty or remain silent, you may receive a jury trial.
Yes.
And has your attorney, Ms. Fagan, gone over with you what would be commonly, the rights that would be commonly found in a waiver of rights form, so the rights that you're giving up by taking a guilty plea here today?
Yes.
Okay. And are you satisfied with the services that Ms. Fagan has provided you?
Yes.
And do you need any additional time to discuss any issues or questions that you have with Ms. Fagan at this point?
No.
Okay. And Ms. Fagan, do you waive formal reading of the indictment?
So wait.
Do you also waive any and all defects in the indictment, including any with respect to your client's name for the purposes of this plea or hearing?
So wait.
And Mr. Mender, has your attorney advised you of the minimum and maximum sentence for each charge that you be pleaded guilty to?
Yes.
Okay. And do you understand that you be, through the negotiations between the state and your counsel, you pleading guilty to counts 44, 45, and 46? You understand that?
Yes.
And do you understand as it relates to count 44, the possession of a weapon by an incarcerated individual, the minimum is 1 year, the maximum is 5 years?
Yes.
And as it relates to count 45, I'm having a cell phone in the jail, the minimum is 1 year, the maximum is 5 years for that too?
Yes.
And then lastly, for count 46, the street gang activity, participation in the criminal street gang activity charge or count, the minimum is 5 years, the maximum is 20 years.
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any questions at this point as it relates to the minimum maximums for any of the charges or all of the charges you are pleading guilty to?
No.
And do you understand, sir, that this is a negotiated plea of guilty, which means the state and your counsel, Ms. Fagan, will be recommending a joint recommendation to the court, but the court is not bound by that recommendation and can sentence you as she sees fit, in the sense that she can run each sentence for each charge you'd be pleading guilty to that doesn't merge or vacate by operation of law, consecutive or one after another.
Yes.
Okay. Do you also understand, sir, that by pleading guilty here today, it may be used to enhance sentencing on other convictions in this jurisdiction, as well as in other jurisdictions, including the federal courts?
Yes.
Do you also understand, sir, if you're not a United States citizen, a guilty plea will affect your immigration status and will result in deportation, regardless of any advice given to you by your attorney, Ms. Fagan, or anybody else?
Yes.
Do you understand that you waive any and all defenses here today by entering a plea of guilty?
Yes.
Do you also understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the following rights? And I'm going to read a list of rights, okay? The right to a trial by jury, the right to remain silent and to not incriminate yourself, the right to confront witnesses against you, the right to the assistance of counsel hired by you or court appointed if you are unable to afford an attorney for the trial of your case.
Yes.
The right to presumption of innocence, the right to testify on your own behalf and to present other evidence, the right to subpoena witnesses and to compel the production of evidence, the right to have the charges against you proved beyond a reasonable doubt by the state of Georgia, and the right to appeal when convicted of these charges after a trial. Do you understand that you're waiving or giving up all of the rights I just read to you by pleading guilty here today, sir?
Yes.
And Mr. Mender, has anyone forced, threatened, or promised you anything to get you to enter a guilty plea here today?
No.
And is it your decision to waive these rights and enter a guilty plea on counts 44, 45, and 46 because you're in fact guilty, sir?
Yes.
And how do you plead to count 44 in indictment number 22 SC 183572, which is the possession of a weapon by an incarcerated individual?
Yes.
And how do you plead to count 45, which is the possession of a telecommunication or cell phone by an incarcerated individual here in the Fulton County Jail?
Yes.
And the last count that you're pleading guilty to is count 46. How do you plead to count 46, which is participation in criminal street gang activity count?
And Your Honor, and to the state, does the state oppose for the gang count of the 22 SC case to be Alfred? Because ultimately in the 21 SC case, we're talking about a completely separate gang.
I'll leave it to the discretion of the court. It won't mess up negotiations.
And I assume that those, I don't have the indictment right here in front of me, but those are related to the possession of the weapon and possession of the
And
cell phone.
which I don't think was.
Yeah, I'll take that as an Alfred on 46. That's
Yes,
fine.
Your Honor.
Okay. So, Mr. Mender, as it relates to count 46, are you pleading guilty under Alfred because you believe it is in your best interest to do so?
Yes.
Okay. And you understand, are you aware that even if you're not admitting guilt as it relates to count 46, that this plea of guilty as it relates to that count places you in the same position as if you were convicted by a jury after trial? Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Mender, is this guilty plea freely and voluntarily given with full knowledge of the charges against you?
Yes.
And do you understand that you may only have a limited right to appeal this guilty plea conviction?
Yes.
And then, sir, do you understand that you have only 4 years from today for a felony charge to file what's called a habeas corpus petition challenging the voluntariness of this guilty plea? Do you understand that?
Yes.
Challenging anything about the constitutionality of the
Yes.
guilty plea.
Do you have any questions as it relates to that? I know Ms. Fagan has had some time to talk to you about this plea and the potential of it.
No.
Right. Do you also understand you have 30 days from today to file a direct appeal from this guilty plea and or until the end of the term of the court to file a motion seeking to withdraw this guilty plea as it relates to the 22 SC case?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any questions as it relates to that, as it relates to the deadlines, the timing for those two options that I just talked about?
No, I don't have no question.
Okay. Your Honor, I believe the defense counsel has the indictment, but that's my understanding. I know the state signed it. I believe the defendant is currently signed it. So what I would do is I submit it to the court as all parties have signed.
All right. And Mr. Mender, with regard to the direct appeal or the motion to withdraw, Ms. Fagan would be the one to represent you for either of those filings unless she's permitted to withdraw before the end of the term of court. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Your Honor, had this case proceeded to trial as it relates to the counts in which the defendant has pled guilty to, counts 44, 45, and 46, the state would be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that on February 18th of 2022, the defendant was living or staying at 901 Rack Street, Atlanta, Georgia, Fulton County, which is the Fulton County Jail, on the 18th of February, and there had been called Operation Sunrise, is what I believe it was.
Operation what?
Sunrise, I apologize, which was an operation in which the Sheriff's Department planned as it relates to doing a shakedown of the cells and the zones within the Fulton County Jail to find or look for any cell phones or weapons such as shanks as it relates to this case. Upon the shakedown of the search of Mr. Mender's cell. What they did find in his living quarters was a cell phone or telecommunication device, as well as a shank or a sharp knife-like object commonly used to commit aggravated assaults and assaults of that nature in the Fulton County Jail. While doing so, in the investigation as it relates to, at this time, in February of 2022, the investigators were able to determine or link an association with the YSL gang. His roommate at the time was Mr. Marquavius Huey, who was also a documented known member of YSL, and both the shank or the knife-like device and the cell phone are commonly used in the jail in order to encourage and organize crimes outside of the jail as it relates to other violent crimes like aggravated assault, thefts, and crimes in which money can be gained for the enterprise of the gang. Your Honor.
Okay.
Had the state proceeded to trial, that's what the state would have been able to prove. As it relates to Mr. Mender, in my review of Mr. Mender's criminal history, he does have 3 prior felony convictions. And I know probation is here, so I'm going to leave it up to for them to double check my.
He does have 3, actually 4 crimes, 16 SC, 14283, President Advisement and obstruction of a law enforcement officer, 16 SC 147629, fleeing and eluding police and obstruction of a law enforcement officer, 17 SC 149680, death by receiving stolen property, and 17 SC 152052. The first 3, he's already used his first offender. He is not currently on active probation currently.
Okay, what was the charge for the last one, the 152052?
Entering counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, entering a vehicle, and then counts 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, criminal trespassing.
Okay. Thank you.
And Your Honor, the joint recommendation that the state and defense will be presenting to the court will be a global recommendation of 10 years to serve, 2 years, which would be credit for time served, which the defendant has served all 2 years. So the remainder would be served on probation. What Ms. Fagan and the state have discussed is that after 5 years of success on probation, that the last 5 years could suspend.
All right, well, there'd only be 8 years on probation, so the last 3 would be
Yes, all
suspended?
of my math is
Okay,
correct.
and are there special conditions?
Just the special conditions required by the gang statute, which would be that the defendant cannot associate with any gang members at all. That would include members of YSL as well as the Rolling 60s. Obviously, he would not be able to possess a weapon, which he's not supposed to possess one now anyway, since he's a convicted felon. And other than that, just no violations of the law. Your Honor.
All right. I'm gonna, and you do have a high school degree, so I'm gonna require that you secure a job and maintain a job over the course of your probation. And I'm also gonna require that you be subject to, that you sign a Fourth Amendment waiver, so that during the period of your probation, you can be searched for any kind of things you're not supposed to have, like illicit, illegal drugs, guns, things like that. Okay? And Ms. Fagan, I noticed on the plea that got signed, and I'm sure it's because y'all wrote count 3 guilty under Alfred, but it's not really count 3, it's count 46. I know it's the 3rd count that you're pleading to, but if y'all want to correct that, please?
And I'll put the other counts for the guilt.
All right, thank you. All right, I find there to be a factual basis for this guilty plea. I'll accept the plea to counts 44 and 45 as a straight guilty plea, and the plea to count 46 under Alfred, meaning that, Mr. Mender, you believe it to be in your best interest to enter that plea and believe that whether you are admitting your guilt or not, there's sufficient evidence that a jury could find that you were guilty of that offense if it went to trial. So I find the plea to be freely, voluntarily, intelligently, and knowingly entered with an understanding of the consequences, and I'll accept it as such. And you've already been told that you are not to possess any weapons. I just need to ask if you've got a weapons carry license.
Okay.
Okay. If you did, you would have to turn that in. But all right, and I'm going to sentence in accord with the negotiated recommendation. On count 44, the sentence is 5 years to serve to 3 probated. Count 45, the sentence is the same, concurrent. And then count 46, the sentence is 10 years to serve to concurrent. Credit for time served on all of those. The 8-year balance of the probation is going to be on probation. After 5 years of successful probation, meaning no revocations, the remaining 3 years can be suspended. And special conditions, you need to sign a Fourth Amendment waiver, you need to secure and you need to maintain a job during the course of your probation, and no associating in any way with any other criminal street gang members from any gang, and no possessing any weapons. All right, good luck to you. And now we'll turn to the plea on the 21 SC case.